The stars looked different this far from Earth. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the view screen display a system that no human had ever seen before. 3 planets orbited a yellow sun, and the scanner showed that at least 2 of them had the resources humanity desperately needed. "Captain, we're picking up some unusual readings," Lisa Hayes said from the navigation station. She was young for her position, only 28, but she had proven herself countless times during their 2-year mission. Her fingers moved across her console as she tried to make sense of what the sensors were telling her. Jake walked over to her station and looked at the data. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures, big ones. And they're not natural." Lisa adjusted the sensors and the readings became clearer. "Sir, there are ships in this system. A lot of them." The bridge went quiet. The Horizon's Edge was an exploration vessel, not a warship. They had basic weapons for defense against pirates or debris, but nothing that could handle a real fight. Ben Carter, the chief engineer, looked up from his station with concern on his face. "How many ships are we talking about?" Jake asked. "At least 30, maybe more." Lisa's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension in it. "They're in orbit around the second planet." Kate Williams, the science officer, brought up an image on the main screen. The ships were unlike anything in Earth's database. They were massive, each one at least 3 times the size of the Horizon's Edge. Their hulls were dark and covered in sharp angles that seemed designed to intimidate, as much as to function. "I'm not picking up any communication signals," Kate said, "but those ships are definitely active. Power readings are off the charts." Jake made a decision. "Take us in slowly. Broadcast a standard first contact greeting on all frequencies. Let's hope they're friendly." The Horizon's Edge moved deeper into the system, and Lisa sent out the greeting message in multiple languages and mathematical sequences. For 10 long minutes, there was no response. The crew waited, every eye fixed on the screen. Then everything happened at once. "Captain, they're responding," Kate said. "But it's not a greeting. It's a demand." The main screen flickered and a face appeared. It was not human. The alien had gray skin that looked like stone, with 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern on its face. Its mouth was a thin line that didn't move when it spoke, but the translation software converted its words into English. "Primitive vessel. You have entered Krell space. State your purpose or be destroyed." Jake straightened his uniform and stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace. We're explorers from the planet Earth, and we meant no offense by entering your space. We didn't know this system was claimed." The alien's 4 eyes seemed to focus on him with something like disgust. "Earth, we have heard of your species. You spread across your local systems like a disease, claiming worlds that do not belong to you." "We're colonizing uninhabited systems," Jake said, keeping his voice calm. "We're not taking anyone's home. All systems belong to the Krell Empire," the alien said. "We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Your species is new and ignorant. You will submit to our authority or you will be eliminated." Jake felt his heart rate increase, but he kept his expression neutral. "I don't have the authority to make that kind of decision for humanity. I would need to bring your message back to Earth and let our leaders respond." "There is nothing to discuss," the Krell said. "You will transmit your coordinates to Earth and order your species to prepare for integration into our empire. If you refuse, we will destroy your colonies as an example." "That's not going to happen," Jake said firmly. "Humanity doesn't bow to threats." The Krell's expression didn't change. "Then you have chosen death." The screen went dark. Immediately, alarms blared across the bridge. "They're targeting us," Lisa shouted. "Multiple weapons locks! Get us out of here!" "Maximum speed," Jake ordered. Ben Carter's hands flew across his console, pushing the engines to their limits. The Horizon's Edge turned and accelerated away from the Krell ships. Energy beams cut through space where they had been just seconds before. "They're pursuing," Kate reported. 3 ships breaking formation and coming after us." The next few minutes were the longest of Jake's life. The Horizon's Edge was fast, but the Krell ships were faster. Energy beams came closer and closer, and the ship shook each time one came near enough to disrupt their shields. "Ben, I need everything you've got," Jake called out. "I'm giving it to you, Captain," Ben replied, sweat running down his face as he manually overrode safety limits on the engines. "But we can't outrun them." Lisa was already ahead of him. "There's an asteroid field at the edge of the system. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them in the clutter." "Do it." The ship dove toward the asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks that could crush them if they made one wrong move. Lisa's skills as a navigator had never been more important. She guided them through impossible gaps using the asteroids as cover. Behind them, the Krell ships followed, but they were less maneuverable. One of them clipped an asteroid and spun out of control. The other two kept coming, their weapons firing constantly. "We're taking damage to the rear shields," Ben reported. "They won't hold much longer." Then Kate said something that gave Jake an idea. "Captain, there's a gas giant on our current heading. If we skim its atmosphere at the right angle, we might be able to use the gravity to slingshot around it and gain some distance." "That's crazy," Ben said. "It's our only shot," Jake replied. "Lisa, take us in." The Horizon's Edge dove toward the massive planet, its hull groaning under the stress. The Krell ships followed, but as they entered the upper atmosphere, their larger size became a disadvantage. The atmospheric drag affected them more than it affected the smaller human vessel. Lisa timed it perfectly. They skimmed the atmosphere at an angle that used the planet's gravity to accelerate them while the Krell ships struggled against the drag. When they emerged on the other side, they had gained just enough distance to engage their faster-than-light drive. "Jump now," Jake ordered. Space twisted around them and the Horizon's Edge vanished, leaving the Krell ships behind. In the safety of faster-than-light travel, the crew finally allowed themselves to breathe. Jake sat down in his captain's chair and tried to process what had just happened. "Set course for Earth," he said quietly. "We need to warn them. The Krell are coming and they're not interested in peace." Lisa nodded and began plotting the course. Kate was already preparing a detailed report of everything they had learned about the Krell ships and their technology. Ben started assessing the damage to the ship. Jake looked at the star field streaming past them and felt a weight settle on his shoulders. They had just made first contact with an alien empire, and it had gone about as badly as it possibly could. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was terrifying. The journey back to Earth would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to figure out how to tell humanity that they were about to face an enemy they couldn't possibly defeat. 3 weeks before everything changed forever. Jake Morrison had been a soldier before he became an explorer. He had seen combat, had faced death before, but this was different. This time it wasn't just his life on the line, it was the entire human race. He stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krell Empire was preparing to crush humanity, but Jake made himself a promise right then. They might be more powerful, they might have more ships and better weapons, but they had never faced humans before. They had no idea what they were dealing with. The Horizon's Edge raced toward Earth, carrying a warning that would change history. Behind them in Krell space, the Empire began to mobilize. The collision was inevitable now. War was coming. The Horizon's Edge arrived at Earth 3 weeks after their encounter with the Krell, but they were already too late. As they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the communication channels were full of emergency broadcasts and military traffic. Something terrible had happened. "Captain, I'm picking up distress signals from the Newton colony," Lisa said, her voice shaking, "and the Churchill settlement, and—" "Oh no, New Boston." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Get me Fleet Command. Now." The face that appeared on screen belonged to Admiral Susan Clark. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her gray hair was pulled back tight and her eyes were hard. "Morrison, where the hell have you been?" "We encountered the Krell, Admiral. We were coming back to warn you." "Too late for warnings," Clark said bitterly. "They hit us 4 days ago. 3 colonies, gone, just gone. 15 million people dead in a matter of hours. They sent 1 ship to each colony and destroyed everything. Then they broadcast a message to Earth. Submit or die." Jake closed his eyes. "Admiral, I'm sorry. We came as fast as we could, I know, Captain. Get your ship to Mars Station immediately. We're gathering everyone we can. If the Krell are coming for Earth, we need every vessel we have." The Horizon's Edge joined hundreds of other ships at Mars Station. Military vessels, cargo haulers, mining ships, even luxury liners. Anything that could mount a weapon or carry troops was being pressed into service. Jake had never seen Earth's military in full mobilization before. It was impressive, but it was also clear that it wouldn't be enough. In the command center, Jake met with Admiral Clark and General Pete Robinson. The general was a tall man with dark skin and a scar across his left cheek from an old battle with pirates. He studied the tactical displays with the intensity of someone who knew they were looking at an impossible situation. "We have intelligence now," Clark said. bringing up images of Krell ships. After the colony attacks, we sent stealth probes to watch their movements. The Krell Empire controls most of the galaxy. They have thousands of ships, hundreds of worlds, and technology that makes ours look like stone tools. How long do we have? Jake asked. 6 months, Robinson said. Maybe less. They're gathering a fleet. Our best estimate is 300 ships, each one capable of destroying a planet. Kate Williams, who had been invited to the meeting because of her expertise, spoke up. We've analyzed the recordings from the colony attacks. Their shields absorb our energy weapons almost completely. Missiles do some damage, but not enough. A direct nuclear hit might work, but getting close enough to deliver it would be suicide. So we're outgunned, outnumbered, and our weapons don't work, Jake said. What's our plan? We don't have one yet, Clark admitted. Every simulation we've run ends with our extinction. We're trying to evacuate as many people as possible to the outer colonies, but there's no way we can save everyone. A young woman in a lab coat entered the room. She couldn't have been more than 25, with short black hair and eyes that burned with determination. Admiral, I have something you need to hear. Clark looked annoyed at the interruption. Dr. Amy Chen were in the middle of a strategy session. That's why I'm here, Amy said. She walked to the display and pulled up her own data. Everyone is trying to match the Krell's technology. That's a mistake. We can't beat them at their own game. But we don't have to. Explain, Robinson said, leaning forward. Amy brought up a comparison chart. The Krell have energy shields, faster than light drives, and weapons that can crack planets. But look at what they don't have. No kinetic barriers, no experience with guerrilla tactics. Their doctrine is based on overwhelming force and direct confrontation. They've won every war for 10,000 years using the same strategy. And? Clark asked. And they've never fought humans before, Amy said. We're not going to line up our ships and trade shots with them. We're going to hit them where they're weak. Kinetic weapons, nuclear mines, ambush tactics. We make them fight our kind of war, not theirs. Jake found himself nodding. It's like fighting a heavyweight boxer. You don't trade punches. You stay mobile, hit hard, and get out before they can hit back. Exactly, Amy said. We have 6 months. We can turn every asteroid in the system into a weapon. We can seed the approaches to Earth with mines. We can train our pilots in close-quarters combat where their bigger ships are a disadvantage. Robinson looked skeptical. You're talking about using primitive weapons against an advanced enemy. I'm talking about using unexpected weapons, Amy corrected. The Krell expect us to fight like everyone else they've conquered. Energy weapons, shield-to-shield combat, honorable battle. We throw that out and fight dirty. We fight to win. Clark studied the data Amy had provided. It's risky. If we commit to this strategy and it fails, we won't have time to try anything else. If we try to fight them conventionally, we've already lost, Jake said. I was there, Admiral. I saw their ships. Dr. Chen is right. Our only chance is to do something they don't expect. The Admiral looked at Robinson, who slowly nodded. We don't have any better ideas, and doing nothing means we all die anyway. All right, Clark said. Dr. Chen, you have your authorization. Start implementing your plan. Morrison, you're going to work with her. You've seen the Krell up close. Your experience will be valuable. Over the next 6 months, Earth transformed into a fortress. Amy Chen's ideas, initially met with resistance from traditional military minds, became the foundation of humanity's defense. Jake watched as she worked 16-hour days, turning theory into reality. The asteroid belt became a minefield. Thousands of nuclear devices were hidden throughout the belt, each one remotely controlled and capable of being triggered at precisely the right moment. It wouldn't stop the Krell fleet, but it would hurt them. A civilian engineer named Danny Lee approached Jake one day with an idea. He was a quiet man who usually worked on mining equipment, but the war had brought out something in him. Captain Morrison, I think I can trap them. Trap them how? Jake asked. Danny explained his concept. By creating artificial gravity wells using massive amounts of energy, they could prevent ships from engaging their faster-than-light drives. It only lasts a few minutes and it takes a huge power source. But if we can trap their flagship even temporarily, we can hit it with everything we have. Jake brought Danny to meet Amy, and the two engineers worked together to make it happen. They built gravity well generators and installed them on remote-controlled drones. It was experimental technology, barely tested, but it gave them an option they hadn't had before. Ben Carter worked with the shipyards to retrofit every vessel for the new tactics. Weapon systems were stripped out and replaced with missile launchers and magnetic accelerators. The military pilots trained for new formations, learning to fight in swarms rather than lines. Lisa Hayes helped plan the evacuation of Earth's major cities. They couldn't save everyone, but they could save some. Ships left Earth every day, carrying refugees to the outer colonies. It was heartbreaking work, choosing who got to leave and who had to stay. Kate Williams studied every piece of information they had about the Krell. She learned their language, their culture, their history. They're arrogant, she told Jake one evening. They've been at the top for so long that they can't imagine losing. That's their weakness. As the 6 months drew to a close, Jake stood on Mars Station and looked at what humanity had built. It wasn't much compared to the Krell armada that was coming, but it was something. It was a chance. Amy Chen found him there. We've done everything we can, she said quietly. Now we wait. Are you scared? Jake asked. Terrified, Amy admitted, but also angry. The Krell think we're going to roll over and die. They think we're just another primitive species to be conquered. They have no idea what humans are capable of when we're backed into a corner. No, Jake agreed. They really don't. The fleet assembled around Earth. 500 ships, most of them barely armed, all of them crewed by people who knew they probably weren't coming back. Jake took command of a small strike group, while Admiral Clark coordinated the overall defense from Mars Station. On the last day before the Krell arrival, Jake recorded a message to his family. He told them he loved them. He told them that whatever happened, humanity would fight. He told them to remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. Then he deleted the message. If he died, he wanted his last words to be on the battlefield, not in a recording. The sensors picked up the Krell fleet as it entered the solar system. 300 massive warships moving in perfect formation, confident in their superiority. They had crushed countless species before. They expected this to be no different. Jake looked at his crew. Lisa at navigation, Ben at engineering, Kate at sensors. All of them young, all of them afraid, all of them ready. Here they come, he said. Remember the plan. Hit hard, move fast, and make them regret ever hearing about Earth. The Battle of Terra was about to begin. The Krell armada moved through space like a wall of death. 300 ships in tight formation, their dark hulls reflecting the distant sun. On the bridge of his command ship, Jake Morrison watched them approach on the sensors. His small strike group of 20 vessels waited in the shadow of Mars, engines cold, hoping that Krell scanners would miss them in the clutter of the planet's mass. They're not even trying to hide, Lisa whispered. They're flying straight in like they own the place. Because they think they do, Jake replied. He opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, remember your training. Wait for my signal. Nobody fires until I give the word. The Krell fleet reached the outer markers of the asteroid belt. This was where Amy Chen's plan would either work or fail spectacularly. Jake held his breath as the first Krell ships entered the belt, moving cautiously now, their sensors probing for threats. Admiral Clark's voice came over the command channel from Mars Station. Morrison, you are cleared to execute on your discretion. Jake waited. The Krell needed to commit more ships into the belt. Right now, only their forward elements were in the danger zone. He needed more of them inside before he sprang the trap. 20 ships, 50, 100. Now, Jake shouted. Detonate all charges. Throughout the asteroid belt, thousands of nuclear devices exploded simultaneously. The space between the asteroids became a hellstorm of fire and radiation. Krell ships were caught in overlapping blast waves, their shields flaring bright as they struggled to absorb the energy. Multiple hits, Kate reported from her sensor station. Their shields are holding, but they're taking damage. 3 ships are breaking formation. All units attack pattern Delta, Jake ordered. Go, go, go! His strike group came out from behind Mars at full acceleration, launching missiles as they closed the distance. They weren't trying to destroy the Krell ships. That would be impossible. They were trying to confuse them, to break their formation, to make them react. The Krell did react. Their massive ships turned to face the new threat, their weapons powering up. Energy beams lanced through space, destroying 3 human ships instantly. But Jake's group was already scattering, each ship taking a different vector, forcing the Krell to split their fire. Break and run, Jake called out. Get them to chase you. The human ships dove back toward Mars, and just as Amy had predicted, the Krell ships pursued. They were angry now, their perfect formation broken. They wanted to punish the humans for daring to hurt them. That's when the second wave hit them from behind. Another 50 human ships led by General Robinson himself came out of hiding near Jupiter and hammered the Krell rearguard with everything they had. More missiles, more nuclear weapons, more chaos. The battle became a running fight through the inner solar system. Human ships used the planets for cover, popping out to fire a salvo and then disappearing again before the Krell could target them properly. It was nothing like the grand fleet battles the Krell were used to. It was messy and confusing, and the humans were everywhere at once. "Captain, the Krell flagship is moving toward Earth," Lisa reported. "Looks like they're tired of our games. They're going for a direct strike on the planet." Jake had been expecting this. The Krell commander would eventually realize that destroying Earth would end the battle. All their preparations, all their clever tactics meant nothing if the Krell could simply crush the planet itself. "Time to use Danny's toy," Jake said. He switched to a private channel. "Danny, are you in position?" Danny Lee's voice came back, tight with tension. "In position, Captain. I've got 6 drones with gravity well generators. They're old mining haulers with the engines pulled out, but they'll work, I hope. You're about to find out. Get ready to deploy on my mark." Jake's ship broke away from the general battle and accelerated toward the Krell flagship. It was a monster, easily 10 times the size of anything humanity had ever built. Its weapons could level a city with a single shot. Getting close to it was suicide. "Ben, I need every bit of speed you can give me," Jake said. "Captain, if I push the engines any harder—" "We're going to shake apart," Ben replied from engineering. "Then shake apart after we launch the drones." Ben laughed, a slightly crazy sound. "Yes, sir." They raced toward the flagship, and Jake felt time slow down. The Krell ship was turning, its main weapons targeting them. He could see the energy building in the massive cannons. They had maybe 10 seconds before those weapons fired. Danny, now. 6 small drones detached from Jake's ship and rocketed toward the Krell flagship, spreading out in a hexagonal pattern. The Krell ignored them. They were tiny, barely worth noticing compared to the threat of Jake's ship. That was their mistake. The drones reached their positions and activated. Danny's gravity well generators kicked in, creating artificial gravity fields that overlapped around the Krell flagship. Space twisted, and the massive ship suddenly found itself trapped, unable to engage its faster-than-light drive, unable to maneuver properly. "All ships, target the flagship," Admiral Clark's voice boomed across all channels. "Hit it with everything we have." Every human ship in range turned toward the trapped Krell flagship. Hundreds of missiles launched simultaneously. Nuclear weapons, kinetic penetrators, anything and everything that could damage the monster. The Krell shields were powerful, but they had limits, and humanity was about to find out what those limits were. The flagship's shields held through the first wave, and the second, but the third wave got through. Explosions rippled across the Krell ship's hull. Atmosphere vented into space. Sections went dark. "The gravity wells are failing," Danny reported. "I can give you maybe 30 more seconds. Make it count," Jake shouted to the fleet. "Keep firing." The fourth wave hit, and this time the damage was catastrophic. The flagship's main reactor went critical. Jake watched on his screen as the massive ship tore itself apart from the inside. The explosion was so bright that the automatic filters on the view screen kicked in to protect their eyes. For a moment, the entire battle stopped. Both sides stared at the expanding fireball where the Krell flagship had been. The Krell had lost their command ship, something that hadn't happened to them in living memory. Then the Krell went crazy with rage. Their remaining ships abandoned any attempt at formation and charged at Earth, determined to destroy it even if it cost them everything. "All ships, fall back to Earth orbit," Clark ordered. "Defensive formation, Omega." The human fleet, battered and reduced by half, pulled back to form a last line of defense around their home world. The Krell came at them in a wave of fury, and the real killing began. Ships died on both sides. The space around Earth became a graveyard. Jake's ship took a direct hit that knocked out their weapon systems. Lisa kept them moving, dodging through the chaos, while Ben tried desperately to get something, anything, back online. A Krell cruiser locked onto them, and Jake knew they were done. There was no way to dodge, no tricks left to try. He was about to order his crew to evacuate when a mining ship rammed the Krell cruiser at full speed. The impact crippled both ships, but it saved Jake's crew. "Who was that?" Jake demanded. "Civilian vessel named Carla's Hope," Kate said quietly. "They just sacrificed themselves to save us." Jake felt sick. Civilians were dying for them, people who had no military training, who just wanted to protect their world. Get me back in this fight, Ben, now. Working on it, Captain. The battle raged for 3 weeks. It wasn't one continuous fight, but dozens of smaller engagements as both sides regrouped and struck again. The Krell had more ships and better weapons, but the humans fought like cornered animals. They used every trick, every dirty tactic, every advantage of local knowledge. Kate Williams made a discovery during the second week. Captain, I've been analyzing their tactics. They're predictable. Once you damage one of their systems, they always fall back to repair before re-engaging. And they won't fire on ships that appear disabled. They consider it dishonorable, Jake said, understanding immediately. They have rules of war. Rules we don't follow, Kate confirmed. Jake broadcast the information to the fleet. Within hours, human ships were using fake damage to lure Krell vessels into ambushes. It was deceptive and underhanded, and it saved lives. By the end of the third week, the Krell had lost 75 ships. Humanity had lost over 300, but the math didn't tell the whole story. The Krell were used to easy victories. They were used to overwhelming their enemies with superior force. They had never faced an opponent who refused to quit, who kept fighting even when the situation seemed hopeless. The Krell commander, whoever had taken over after the flagship's destruction, made a decision. The remaining Krell ships withdrew to the outer solar system to regroup. It wasn't a retreat, not exactly, but it wasn't victory either. On Mars Station, Admiral Clark looked at the tactical display with exhausted eyes. They'll be back, with more ships. This was just their first wave. But we hurt them, General Robinson said. We proved they can bleed. Jake Morrison, his ship barely functional and his crew dead on their feet, allowed himself a moment of hope. They had survived. Earth still existed. The Krell had learned that humanity wouldn't go down easy. Amy Chen, monitoring the data from the battle, sent a message to all commands. They'll adapt to our tactics now. Whatever we did this time won't work as well next time. We need to keep innovating, keep surprising them. Kate Williams was already working on that. She had 2 years had passed since the Battle of Terra. The war had spread across human space as the Krell kept coming back with larger fleets. Every time humanity pushed them back, they returned stronger. Earth's colonies were under constant attack. The outer settlements had been abandoned, their populations pulled back to more defensible positions. Jake Morrison stood in the briefing room on Mars Station, but he looked different now. His hair had gray streaks that hadn't been there before. His eyes carried the weight of too many lost friends. Around him sat the core group that had somehow survived all the battles. Lisa Hayes, Ben Carter, Kate Williams, Amy Chen, and Danny Lee. Admiral Clark brought up a star map. The Krell control 70% of the known galaxy. They've ruled for 10,000 years by crushing anyone who opposes them, but Kate has discovered something important. Kate stood and pointed to regions on the map. The Krell Empire isn't as stable as it looks. They've conquered dozens of species over the centuries. Most of those species still exist, but they're slaves. They build Krell ships, mine Krell resources, fight Krell wars. I've been intercepting their communications, and there's something interesting. They're watching us. Watching us how? Jake asked. They're seeing humans fight back. They're seeing the Krell bleed. For the first time in their long history of slavery, they're seeing that the Krell can be hurt. Kate pulled up intercepted messages, translated into English. Look at these. They're talking about us in secret channels. Some are afraid we'll anger the Krell and make things worse, but others are hopeful. They're asking questions like, what if we fought too? General Robinson leaned forward. You're suggesting we start a rebellion inside the Krell Empire. I'm suggesting we give them hope, Kate said. We send small teams to make contact. We share what we've learned about Krell tactics and weaknesses. We show them that resistance is possible. It's risky, Admiral Clark said. If we send ships into Krell territory and they're captured, the Krell will learn everything we know. We're losing anyway, Amy Chen said bluntly. The Krell keep adapting to our tactics. Ben's stealth technology helps, but it's not enough. We need allies, or we need a miracle. I'll take allies. Clark looked at Jake. Morrison, you've been quiet. I'm thinking about the species we'd be asking to rebel, Jake said. They've been slaves for generations. They don't know how to fight. If we inspire them to rise up and they fail, the Krell will punish them horribly. And if we do nothing, they stay slaves forever, Kate replied. At least this gives them a choice. Jake slowly nodded. Then we do it right. We don't just inspire them to rebel. We teach them how. We give them weapons, tactics, support. If we're asking them to risk everything, we owe them that much. Admiral Clark made the decision. I'm authorizing covert missions into Krell space. Morrison, you'll lead the first team. Take whoever you need. Jake chose his team carefully. Lisa Hayes would navigate them through Krell territory, using the hidden hyperspace routes she'd been mapping. Ben Carter would handle any technical challenges. Kate Williams would serve as translator and cultural advisor, and Amy Chen would teach their new allies how to fight. They took a modified stealth ship that Ben had designed. It was small, fast, and almost invisible to Krell sensors. The journey into Krell space took 3 weeks of careful travel, avoiding patrol routes and staying in the empty spaces between stars. Their first contact was with a species called the Varan. They were humanoid, about half the size of humans, with blue skin and large eyes adapted for low light. They had been conquered by the Krell 2,000 years ago, and had been building Krell weapons ever since. The meeting took place on a small moon, where the Varan had a hidden settlement, far from Krell oversight. The Varan leader, an old female named Kira, studied the humans with suspicion. "You are the ones fighting the Krell," Kira said through Kate's translation device. "We are," Jake replied. "We wanted to meet you and tell you that the Krell can be beaten." "The Krell cannot be beaten. They are too powerful. We've destroyed over 200 of their ships," Jake said. "We've held them off for 2 years. They're powerful, but they're not invincible." Kira's eyes widened. 200 ships? That's not possible. Amy stepped forward with a datapad. "Here are the records from our battles. Every engagement, every victory, every ship we destroyed. We're not asking you to take our word for it. See for yourself." Kira studied the data for a long time. Finally, she looked up. How do you do this?" "We fight differently than they expect," Amy explained. "The Krell have rules. They believe in honorable combat. We don't. We use ambushes, tricks, anything that works. We hit them where they're weak and run before they can respond." "That's not honorable," Kira said. "No, it's not," Jake agreed. "But it keeps us alive. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead." Over the next week, they taught the Varan everything they could. Amy showed them how to make improvised weapons from Krell technology. Ben taught them how to sabotage Krell ships in ways that wouldn't be immediately obvious. Lisa explained how to use asteroid fields and nebulas for cover. Kate shared intelligence about Krell command structures and communication protocols. The Varan were quick learners. They had been building Krell weapons for centuries. They knew the technology better than anyone except the Krell themselves. When Amy suggested they could turn that knowledge against their masters, something changed in Kira's eyes. "When do we start?" Kira asked. "Not yet," Jake said. "We need to coordinate. If you rise up alone, the Krell will crush you. But if multiple species rebel at the same time all across the Empire, the Krell won't be able to stop all of you." From the Varan, Jake's team moved on to other species. The Korath, a species of amphibians who had been enslaved for 500 years. The Dren, insectoids who had forgotten what freedom felt like. The Halak, energy beings trapped in Krell containment fields and forced to power their ships. Each species had their own skills, their own advantages. The humans didn't try to make them all fight the same way. Instead, they helped each species figure out how to use their unique abilities against the Krell. The Korath could survive in environments that would kill most species. They could sabotage Krell facilities on water worlds. The Dren could communicate over vast distances without technology, making them perfect for coordinating attacks. The Halak could drain Krell power systems if they could get free of their containment. But the work was slow and dangerous. Twice they almost got caught by Krell patrols. Once, Ben had to completely rebuild their stealth system after it failed at a critical moment. Another time, they arrived at a settlement only to find the Krell had discovered and destroyed it the day before. Jake sent regular reports back to Earth. The responses were encouraging. Other teams were making contact with other species. Admiral Clark had committed to the plan, sending more ships and resources to support the growing rebellion. Meanwhile, the war at home continued. The Krell had adapted to many of humanity's tricks. They had learned to avoid ambushes, to watch for hidden weapons, to fight more cautiously. Human casualties were mounting. Every report from Earth brought news of more losses, but humanity kept innovating. Danny Lee had developed a new version of his gravity well generator that was smaller and more powerful. Ben Carter created a stealth mine that could float in space undetected until it was right next to a Krell ship. Amy Chen designed a new tactic where human ships would purposely allow themselves to be boarded, then detonate their own reactors once the Krell troops were inside. It was brutal warfare, and it was taking a toll on everyone. Jake could see it in his crew's faces. Lisa had nightmares about the battles they'd survived. Ben threw himself into his work, barely sleeping. Kate spent hours studying Krell culture, looking for weaknesses, as if understanding them better would somehow make the killing easier to bear. Amy Chen was the one who worried Jake the most. She had become obsessed with finding new ways to hurt the Krell. Every conversation was about weapons, tactics, casualties. She had stopped seeing the Krell as living beings and started seeing them only as problems to solve. "We're becoming like them," Jake said to her one night. "What do you mean?" "The Krell. They're so focused on conquest that they've forgotten what they're conquering for. We're so focused on survival that we're forgetting what we're surviving for." Amy was quiet for a long time. "What choice do we have? If we don't fight, we die. I know, but we can't lose ourselves in the process. If we become monsters to defeat monsters, then what's the point?" Amy didn't have an answer for that. After 6 months of covert operations, Jake's team returned to human space. They had made contact with 17 different species. Not all of them were ready to fight, but enough were willing to try. The network was in place. Now they just needed the right moment to activate it. That moment came sooner than expected. The Krell launched their largest offensive yet, a fleet of 500 ships heading directly for Earth. Every human vessel was called back to defend the home system. It would be the biggest battle of the war. Admiral Clark made the call. "Morrison, tell your friends it's time. If they're going to help us, we need them now." Jake sent the signal, a simple coded message that went out across the network Kate had built. 3 words in multiple languages. The fire rises. Across the Krell Empire, on dozens of worlds, the Slav. The rebellion spread like wildfire across the Krell Empire. What had started with 17 species quickly grew to 40, then 60. Every successful uprising inspired others. The Krell, who had ruled through fear and overwhelming force for 10,000 years, suddenly found themselves surrounded by enemies. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a new ship, the Defiance. His old vessel had been destroyed in a battle near Jupiter, but the fleet had given him a newer, faster ship equipped with all the latest technology. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency. Lisa at navigation, Ben at engineering, Kate at communications. They had become a family forged in fire. "Report from the Varan," Kate said. "They've taken control of 3 weapon manufacturing stations. They're sending us technical data on Krell systems." "Forward it to Amy," Jake ordered. "She'll know what to do with it." Amy Chen was no longer just a weapons researcher. She had become humanity's chief military strategist, coordinating not just human forces but the growing coalition of rebel species. Her office on Mars Station was always busy with representatives from dozens of different worlds, all of them planning the next strike against the Krell. The Krell responded to the rebellions with typical brutality. They destroyed entire settlements as punishment. They executed rebels publicly to discourage others. But for the first time in their history, it didn't work. The more they punished, the more species joined the rebellion. Fear had been their weapon for so long that they didn't know what to do when fear stopped working. "The Krell are learning what humans learned a long time ago," General Robinson said during a strategy meeting. "You can't kill an idea, and the idea that the Empire can fall is spreading faster than they can contain it." The coalition forces weren't fighting the same kind of war the Krell were used to. Each species contributed what they could. The Viren built weapons. The Korath provided intelligence from behind enemy lines. The Dren coordinated communications across vast distances. The Halak powered coalition ships, giving them speed and energy that rivaled the Krell. New species brought new advantages. The Piran, silicon-based life forms who lived in volcanic regions, could sabotage Krell mining operations in environments where others couldn't survive. The Zell, who existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, could pass through Krell shields like they weren't there. The Norin, master tacticians who had been enslaved for their strategic minds, finally got to use their skills for their own freedom. Admiral Clark coordinated the coalition fleet, which was growing larger every month. Human ships fought alongside Viren cruisers, Korath raiders, and dozens of other vessel types. It wasn't always smooth. Different species had different cultures, different ways of fighting, different ideas about honor and tactics. But they shared one thing: They all wanted the Krell gone. Jake led a mixed squadron on a raid deep into Krell territory. His goal was to destroy a major supply depot that fed the Krell's military machine. With him were ships from 6 different species, each chosen for their unique abilities. Approaching the target, Lisa reported. Krell defenses are heavy. At least 20 patrol ships plus orbital defense platforms. Time to use our new trick, Jake said. He opened a channel to a Zell ship in his squadron. Commander Vex, you're up. The Zell ship phased into another dimension, becoming invisible to Krell sensors. It drifted through the defense perimeter like it wasn't there, then reappeared inside the defensive grid. Before the Krell could react, the Zell ship disabled the defense platforms from the inside. Now, Jake ordered. The squadron poured through the gap, launching missiles and firing weapons at the supply depot. Farron ships targeted the fuel storage. Korath raiders went after the ammunition stores. Human ships focused on the command center. The Krell tried to respond, but they were overwhelmed by the coordinated attack. In 15 minutes, the depot was destroyed. Jake's squadron escaped before Krell reinforcements could arrive. 0 coalition casualties. The Krell were learning that fighting multiple species at once was very different from fighting one at a time. Back on Mars Station, Kate Williams had been working on something important. She had decoded more of the Krell communication network and discovered something surprising. Not all Krell supported the Empire's way of doing things. There's a faction inside Krell society that questions the endless wars, Kate explained to Admiral Clark. They're not in power and they're careful about expressing their views, but they exist. If we could contact them, maybe we could end this war without completely destroying the Krell. After everything they've done, you want to negotiate? Clark asked, her voice hard. I want to win, Kate replied. And winning means surviving. If we push the Krell into a corner where they think they'll be exterminated, they'll fight to the last ship and take as many of us with them as they can. But if we give them a way out, a way to end this with some dignity, they might take it. Jake supported Kate's plan. She's right, Admiral. We're not trying to genocide the Krell. We're trying to free ourselves and the other species they've enslaved. If we can accomplish that through negotiation instead of more killing, we should try. Clark was skeptical, but she authorized Kate to attempt contact with the Krell peace faction. It was dangerous work. If the Krell military leadership found out, they would execute anyone involved. But Kate was careful, using the Dren communication network to send messages that couldn't be traced. The response came 3 weeks later. A Krell admiral named Keth agreed to a secret meeting. He claimed to represent a group within the Krell military that believed the Empire had become unsustainable. Jake volunteered to go to the meeting, despite the obvious risks. If this is a trap, better me than someone more important to the war effort. You're important to the war effort, Admiral Clark said. Then I'll be careful not to get caught. The meeting took place on a neutral space station in an unclaimed system. Jake brought only Kate as a translator. On the Krell side, Admiral Keth came alone. The Krell looked old for his species, with cracks in his stone-like skin that spoke of age and stress. You are the human called Morrison, Keth said through Kate's translator. I have studied your battles. You fight without honor. We fight to survive, Jake replied. Your empire didn't give us much choice. That is true, Keth admitted. My people have become what we once fought against. 10,000 years ago, the Krell were slaves ourselves. We overthrew our masters and swore we would never bow to anyone again. But somewhere along the way, we became the masters we hated. We enslaved others. We justified it by saying we were bringing order to the galaxy. But order built on slavery is just another kind of chaos. So what do you want? Peace, Keth said. Not victory, peace, but my faction is small. The military leadership still believes we can crush this rebellion if we commit enough resources. They see negotiation as weakness. What would it take to change their minds? Kate asked. Proof that victory is impossible, Keth said. A defeat so complete, so undeniable that even the most stubborn admiral has to accept that the Empire cannot win. Jake understood. You want us to destroy a major Krell fleet, not just defeat it. Destroy it completely. Yes, the fleet defending our home system. 300 ships, our best commanders, our most advanced technology. If you can defeat that fleet, the military leadership will have to negotiate. They will have no other choice. That's a suicide mission, Jake said. Our coalition forces are scattered across dozens of systems. Gathering enough ships to attack your home system would leave other areas undefended. I know, Keith said. That's why it must be your decision. I cannot ask you to make this sacrifice. I can only tell you what it would take to end this war. Jake looked at Kate, who nodded slightly. They were thinking the same thing. This could be the opportunity they needed, but it could also be a trap. If they committed their forces to attacking the Krell home system and failed, the rebellion would collapse. I need to discuss this with my leadership, Jake said. Take your time, Keth replied, but not too much time. Every day this war continues. More beings die on both sides. Back on Mars Station, Jake presented Keth's offer to Admiral Clark and General Robinson. The reaction was mixed. Robinson thought it was a trap. Clark thought it might be worth the risk. Amy Chen ran the numbers and concluded that they could win, but casualties would be enormous. We've been fighting for 3 years, Amy said. We've lost millions of people. Every colony has been hit. Earth itself has been attacked a dozen times. If this is a chance to end it, we have to try. And if we fail? Robinson asked. Then we keep fighting, Jake said. Same as we've been doing. But at least we'll know we tried for peace. The decision went all the way up to Earth's civilian government. After days of debate, they gave the authorization. The coalition would attack the Krell home system. Every ship they could spare, every species that could contribute would be part of the assault. It would be the largest battle in galactic history, and humanity, the species that had almost been exterminated 3 years ago, would lead it. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked at the fleet assembling around him. Human ships, Viren ships, Korath ships, and dozens of others, ships from species that had been enemies of each other before the Krell enslaved them all. Now they fought together, united by the simple desire to be free. All ships reporting ready, Lisa said. Then let's... The combined coalition fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Krell home system. Jake Morrison looked at the tactical display and felt his stomach tighten. The Krell defense fleet was even larger than intelligence had suggested. Not 300 ships, but 400. Every class of vessel the Empire had ever built was represented, from fast attack ships to massive dreadnoughts. They knew we were coming, Ben Carter said from the engineering station. Maybe, Jake replied. Or maybe they always keep this many ships guarding their home. Either way, we're committed now. The coalition fleet numbered 600 ships, but most of them were smaller than the Krell vessels. It would be the closest thing to an even fight the war had seen. Admiral Clark commanded from the human flagship Resolute. General Robinson led the ground forces, ready to deploy if they could break through the orbital defenses. Amy Chen coordinated tactics from Mars Station, her voice coming through on the command channel to offer real-time analysis. All ships, this is Admiral Clark. You know the mission. We break their defense fleet, we force them to negotiate, we end this war. Every species here has suffered under Krell rule. Today we show them that suffering ends. All ships advance. The fleet moved forward in a massive wave. The Krell responded immediately, launching their own attack. Space between the two fleets filled with missiles, energy beams, and the bright flashes of ships dying. The battle became chaos within minutes. Jake's squadron used the tactics they had perfected over 3 years of fighting. Human ships and Viren cruisers worked together, the Viren drawing fire with their heavier shields while the human ships darted in to deliver killing blows. Korath raiders appeared from behind asteroids, striking Krell ships that had moved out of formation. Zell vessels phased through enemy shields to plant explosives directly on Krell hulls. They're adapting to our tactics, Lisa warned. The Krell ships are staying in tighter formation. We can't split them up like we usually do. Then we hit them head-on, Jake decided. Ben, transfer all power to forward shields. We're going in. The Defiance accelerated directly toward a Krell dreadnought, a move so reckless that the Krell didn't expect it. Jake's ship took heavy fire, shields flaring as they absorbed hit after hit, but they kept going, closing the distance until they were right against the dreadnought's hull. Now Ben triggered the new weapon he had designed specifically for this battle. Magnetic grapples locked the Defiance to the Krell ship's hull. Then a massive shaped charge, basically a focused nuclear explosion, blasted through the dreadnought's armor. The Defiance detached and accelerated away just as the dreadnought's reactor went critical. That's one, Jake said. 399 to go. Across the battlefield, other coalition ships used similar tactics. The Piran in their heat-resistant ships flew through the exhaust plumes of Krell vessels to attack their engines. The Halak overloaded their own containment to create electromagnetic pulses that disabled Krell systems. The Norin predicted Krell movements with uncanny accuracy, positioning coalition ships exactly where they needed to be. But the Krell fought back hard. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years for a reason. Their ships were powerful, their crews were experienced, and they weren't giving up their empire without a fight. Coalition ships died by the dozens. Jake watched on his sensors as vessels he had fought alongside for years were destroyed in seconds. Casualty reports coming in, Kate said quietly. We've lost over 100 ships in the first hour. The Krell have lost more. Amy's voice came through from Mars Station. Stay focused. The battle plan is working. Admiral Keth had been right about one thing. The Krell home fleet represented their best. They were tougher, smarter, and more determined than any Krell forces the Coalition had faced before. But they were also predictable. They fought with the same doctrine that had won them 1,000 victories over 1,000 years. The Coalition fought with chaos. Every species contributed their unique fighting style, making it impossible for the Krell to predict what would happen next. The Krell expected formation battles. They got guerrilla warfare in 3 dimensions. They expected honor. They got survival tactics that broke every rule they knew. 3 hours into the battle, the Krell defense started to crack. Not because they were beaten, but because they were confused. They had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Every time they developed a counter to one tactic, the Coalition switched to something different. Push forward, Admiral Clark ordered. Break through to the planet. The Coalition fleet pressed the attack. Jake's squadron, now reduced to half its original size, led a charge through a gap in the Krell lines. They fought their way past orbital defense platforms and entered the planet's upper atmosphere. Below them, the Krell homeworld looked beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, cities that glowed in the fading light. It was hard to believe that so much suffering had been commanded from this peaceful-looking place. Captain, receiving a transmission from the surface, Kate said. It's Admiral Keth. The Krell Admiral appeared on screen. Behind him, Jake could see what looked like a government building. Morrison, I'm broadcasting this to the entire fleet, both sides. The military leadership has agreed to negotiate. We're calling for an immediate ceasefire. Jake felt a wave of relief so strong it made him dizzy. Confirm that for me. You're surrendering? We're requesting peace talks, Keth corrected. Not a surrender, but an end to the fighting. The Empire is dissolving. The species we conquered are free. We Krell will withdraw to our homeworlds and will no longer claim dominion over other species. All Coalition ships cease fire. Admiral Clark's voice rang out across the fleet. Hold positions and await further orders. Slowly the battle wound down. Ships on both sides stopped shooting. The silence that followed was strange after hours of constant weapons fire and explosions. Jake looked at his crew. They were exhausted, injured, and covered in sweat and blood. But they were alive. Is it really over? Lisa asked. I think it is, Jake replied. The peace negotiations took 3 weeks. Representatives from every Coalition species met with Krell leaders on the homeworld. Kate Williams served as one of the chief negotiators, her understanding of Krell culture proving invaluable. The terms were simple but firm. The Krell Empire would dissolve. Every conquered species would be granted full independence. The Krell would pay reparations from their considerable resources. War crimes trials would be held for the most brutal Krell commanders. The Krell military would be reduced to a defensive force only. In return, the Coalition agreed not to destroy the Krell as a species. They would be allowed to keep their homeworlds and govern themselves, but they would never again be allowed to build an empire. The Galactic Coalition was formally established with representatives from every free species. Earth, which had started the rebellion, was offered a leadership role, but Admiral Clark declined. We're just one species among many, she said. We all fought for this freedom. We all deserve an equal voice. Jake Morrison attended the signing ceremony on the Krell homeworld. He wore his dress uniform, which felt strange after years of combat gear. Around him were beings from dozens of species, all of them celebrating the same thing: freedom. Admiral Keth approached him after the ceremony. The old Krell looked tired, but also relieved. You know, Morrison, when we first encountered humans, we thought you were primitive. Weak, we were wrong. You were half right, Jake replied. We were primitive. We didn't have your technology or your experience, but we had something you didn't. What was that? We remembered what it felt like to fight for something bigger than ourselves. You Krell had been at the top so long, you forgot why you climbed there in the first place. We never forgot because we were always climbing. Keth nodded slowly. Perhaps that's the lesson. Power without purpose becomes tyranny, and tyranny always falls eventually. Jake returned to Earth a hero, but he didn't feel like one. He felt tired. He had been at war for 5 years. He had seen friends die. He had made decisions that haunted him. He had become someone he barely recognized from the explorer he had been before the war. But Earth was still there. The colonies were being rebuilt. The galaxy was free. Maybe that was enough. Lisa Hayes took a position as the Coalition's chief navigator, mapping safe routes through the newly freed territories. Ben Carter joined the Technology Exchange program, teaching others what humanity had learned while learning from them in return. Kate Williams became the Coalition's head diplomat, using her skills to prevent new conflicts before they started. Amy Chen struggled more than the others. She had spent 5 years thinking about nothing but how to hurt the Krell. Now that the war was over, she didn't know what to do with herself. Jake found her one day sitting alone in a park watching children play. "I designed weapons that killed millions," Amy said quietly. "I'm good at it. Maybe too good. What do I do now?" "You design things that protect instead of destroy," Jake suggested. "Defense systems. Safety protocols. The galaxy is free now, but it's not safe. There are still pirates, natural disasters, accidents. Your skills could save as many lives as they ended." Amy thought about that for a long time. Eventually, she nodded. "Yeah, I can do that." Danny Lee went back to civilian life, but he kept his gravity well.